Welcome to the Two Beans in a Pod. Immediately I have to ask you, if there were a machine that could predict the future, what would you want to see?
That's the ultimate question, isn't it? Your own future, the world's.
Well, with that same idea in mind, a national secret agency supposedly launched Project Looking Glass.
Apparently they were using it to determine the probability of certain outcomes, to help make huge national policy decisions.
But then, starting around 2012, something went wrong. A situation arose where all possibilities, every single one, led to a single outcome.
And that's the mystery. We will explore what that single outcome was and why it was so dangerous that it led to the project's shutdown.
Exactly. And that brings us to the central debate we need to unpack today. What did they see as a dangerous single outcome? And the burning question.
Are CERN's activities related to that?
We will explore the truth behind the Project Looking Glass, so make sure you stick around to the end. And while you're settling in, please hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps support the channel.
So to really get into this, you have to look at where the story comes from. It's not just some random forum post. This comes mostly from a whistleblower named Bill Wood, and it's also connected to claims by a man named Dan Burrish.
And Wood claimed he had indigo level clearance.
Right, indigo, which suggests a level of access way beyond top secret. We're talking special access projects.
So things like reverse engineered alien tech, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But what's interesting about Wood's description of the machine, the looking glass itself, is that he wasn't talking about a crystal ball.
No, not at all. He was talking about physics.
That's the key. He and Burrish based their claims on concepts from string theory,
Which can get pretty complicated. But the basic idea is that everything in the universe is made of tiny vibrating strings.
and how they vibrate determines what they are. So they claim the device used the curvature of space-time and these strings to look at possible futures.
So it wasn't like watching a movie of the future.
No, it was more like a probability cloud, a troubleshooting device.
So an operator could plug in a variable, like what if we do X?
Yeah, exactly. What if we pass this bill and the machine would spit out, say, a 79% chance of event A? It let them navigate all the possibilities.
Which is pretty much the ultimate cheat code for geopolitics.
Oh, for sure. Wood said they used it for what he called the problem reaction solution method.
Right, where you create a problem, get the public to react with fear.
And then you offer the solution you wanted all along. He actually tied this to 9/11 and the Pentagon. The idea being they could game the system because they knew how people would react.
But that's where the story takes a huge turn. The system was working. But as they got closer to the end of 2012, something started to happen to the data.
They called it a contraction.
The 2012 bottleneck. I remember reading Wood's account of the panic in the room. He said that normally a different choice would create a different branch in the timeline.
But not anymore. As they got closer to December 21st, 2012, no matter what, they fed the machine.
It all ended up in the same place.
Imagine a funnel. Everything just got squeezed into one single point, no matter what they tried. Wars, crashes, scandals. The looking glass showed the exact same outcome.
The probability hit 100%.
And if you're a group of people obsessed with control, losing your ability to steer the future, that's terrifying.
It's the ultimate irony. But the twist is what that inevitable event actually was. It wasn't a meteor or a nuclear war, was it?
No, and this is why the story has such staying power. The event wasn't physical destruction, it was an awakening process.
An evolution of consciousness.
Yeah, the machine was showing that humanity would collectively wake up and realize the truth. That the massive dams of lies, as he put it, would just burst.
So the danger that got the project shut down was just the public wising up. It wasn't the end of our world, it was the end of their world.
The end of their control structure. It's a very hopeful narrative, actually.
But we should probably clarify something here. The looking glass wasn't the only device they talked about. There was also the yellow cube.
Right, the yellow cube or the yellow book. People mix them up, but they're very different in the lore.
This was supposedly a smaller holographic device, maybe off-world tech.
And it had a really interesting flaw, one that says a lot about the people using it.
Okay.
It supposedly interacted with the user's own electromagnetic field, their vibration. So if the user had a really strong bias or desire...
Wait, so the cube would show them what they wanted to see?
It was the ultimate confirmation bias machine. It was basically reading their own minds back to them. There's a story that it predicted Hillary Clinton would win an election because they wanted it so badly.
So even with alien tech, your own ego can blind you.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But let's bring this forward. We're obviously past 2012. And that sudden global awakening. It didn't quite happen like that. The old structures are still here.
Which leads us straight to Geneva, Switzerland.
And to CERN. The conspiracy community needed a reason why the timeline didn't contract as predicted. They needed a culprit.
And they picked the European Organization for Nuclear Research, the home of the Large Hadron Collider.
The theory is that the elites, seeing this inevitable loss of control, used the collider to basically break reality, to tear a hole and shift all of us onto a different timeline.
A timeline where they could stay in power.
Exactly. And people point to these weird events at CERN as proof. You know, like when a weasel got into a transformer and shut the whole thing down?
I remember that.
To a conspiracy mindset, that's not just a weasel. That's fate or future forces trying to stop them, to preserve the original awakening timeline.
It's like a cosmic battle. But let's just for a second look at the actual science. What was CERN doing in 2012 that lined up with all this?
Well, 2012 was a massive year for them. It was the year they announced they'd found the Higgs boson.
The God particle.
Right. It's the particle that gives everything else mass. Without it, the universe as we know it couldn't exist. So scientifically, 2012 was a fundamental shift in how we understand reality.
But they're looking for things that, you have to admit, sound a lot like the conspiracy stuff. I was looking at their research goals. Dark matter, supersymmetry, and tiny black holes.
And that's where the language gets slippery.
Yeah.
Physicists theorize that these collisions could create microscopic black holes.
Which sounds terrifying.
It does, but all the safety reports say they would evaporate almost instantly because of Hawking radiation. They wouldn't, eat the planet.
But just the fact that they're looking for them. And for extra dimensions.
You're right. A physicist says extra dimensions, and they mean a complex mathematical concept about gravity. A conspiracy theorist hears that and thinks, portal to another timeline. The two ideas are built on the same words.
And speaking of shifting timelines, we have to talk about that viral story. The one where a CERN scientist supposedly admitted they destroyed the world.
Oh, yeah. This is a classic case of how these things spread. The story was that a top physicist said, "We destroyed the universe in 2012, and we're now living in a secondary reality."
Which, to be fair, would explain a lot about the last decade.
It would, but the source of that quote was a website called Waterford Whispers News.
Which is?
It's an Irish satire site. It's basically their version of The Onion. It was a complete joke.
But it took off because it tapped into that whole Mandela effect feeling that something is just off.
Exactly. It felt true, so people ran with it.
Okay, so let's pivot from the satire and the sci-fi back to solid ground. Because the name Project Looking Glass wasn't just invented by Bill Wood, it was a real U.S. military operation.
Oh, yeah. And the reality is just as fascinating in its own way. Operation Looking Glass was the code name for the airborne command post of the Strategic Air Command.
So this was the doomsday plane.
This was the ultimate doomsday plane. They were EC-135C aircraft, later the E-6B Mercury, and the name Looking Glass was literal. The plane's mission was to mirror the ground-based command centers.
The idea being that if a nuclear strike took out the command bunkers on the ground,
the general on that plane could still launch a retaliatory strike. The plane became the brain of the entire nuclear arsenal.
And the level of dedication to this is just staggering. For 29 years, from 1961 to 1990, there was always one of those planes in the air.
Always. 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. One wouldn't land until its replacement was up and running.
Can you imagine? And the tech was amazing. They had these VLF antennas.
Very low frequency. It was a wire that trailed 5 miles behind the plane.
5 miles?
5 miles. Because those low-frequency radio waves can penetrate seawater. It was the only way to send launch codes to the nuclear subs hiding in the deep ocean.
Wow. So you have this plane circling endlessly, dragging a 5-mile wire, literally holding the fate of the world.
That's a very different kind of looking glass. It's not looking at the future, it's staring into the abyss of nuclear war.
It really grounds the whole myth, though. You can see how a top-secret project with that name, dealing with the end of the world, could morph into a time travel story.
For sure. The military reality provides the skeleton. The conspiracy just adds the flesh.
And there's actually a third looking glass that's almost comical in all this. It involves Sun Microsystems.
And Steve Jobs. Yeah, this is the light part of the story. In 2003, Sun was developing a 3D desktop environment. They called it Project Looking Glass.
The idea was you could flip your windows around, write notes on the back of them, organize your desktop in 3D space.
It was pretty cool for the time, but when they showed it off, Steve Jobs apparently called them and threatened to sue them into the ground.
He thought it copied Apple's look and feel.
Yep. And Sun didn't have the money to fight Apple in court, so the project just kind of faded away.
A nuclear doomsday plane, a failed 3D desktop, and a time-traveling alien device. What a mix.
But you have to see how these things get woven together. Especially in a movement like QAnon, Looking Glass is a huge term for them.
Okay, so how did that happen?
Well, the QAnon narrative has a problem. If the deep state is this all-powerful, all-knowing cabal, how could the good guys ever win?
They needed an ace in the hole.
They need a cheat code, so they adopted the Project Looking Glass story. The belief became that Q and the White Hats had this technology. They could see the future. They knew every move the deep state was going to make.
Which explains the phrase, trust the plan. You can only trust a plan that blindly if you believe the planner can see the future.
Exactly. But then that leads you to this thing psychologists call prophetic failure.
What happens when the big prediction doesn't come true?
Right. When the mass arrests don't happen or an election doesn't go the way it was supposed to, you'd think people would abandon the belief.
But they double down.
They double down. It's cognitive dissonance. It's less painful to invent a reason for the failure than to admit you were wrong. So they say, the timeline shifted, or it's all happening secretly.
And that ties right back into the Mandela effect. I'm not misremembering. Reality changed. It's a defense mechanism.
It's the ultimate defense mechanism. If you believe in timeline wars, then your own memory errors become proof that you're right. It's a self-sealing logic.
It's more comforting to believe someone is steering things, even if it's a battle, than to accept that maybe nobody is really in control.
That's the heart of it. The Bill Wood story, for all its weirdness, ends with a promise. It promises an inevitable awakening, that good will win. That's a powerful, almost religious message.
Especially when you contrast it with the reality. A guy in a plane, drinking stale coffee, waiting for a call to end the world. The fantasy is just... It's a better story.
The fantasy offers a resolution. The reality only offers vigilance.
It makes you wonder, though. Bill Wood predicted this awakening where we see through the dams of lies.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not some cosmic event that happens to us. Maybe it's just us. Maybe the real Looking Glass is just critical thinking. The ability to look at all these stories, the satire, the science, the secrets, and decide for yourself what makes sense.
That's the only timeline we can actually control.
Thank you for listening to Two Beans in a Pod.